The Arena of Resolution on Nexus 7 had not hosted a formal combat challenge in over 2 centuries. Built during an earlier, more violent era of galactic politics, the circular chamber with its reinforced walls and energy barriers had been designed to contain conflicts that might otherwise escalate into full-scale wars. Now, as beings from across the galaxy crowded into the viewing galleries, it buzzed with an excitement that few could remember experiencing. News of the challenge had spread through the station's networks with unprecedented speed. Within hours, representatives from major galactic powers had arrived to witness what many were calling the most significant interspecies confrontation in recent memory. The outcome would not just determine the winner of a personal dispute, but would establish precedents for how humanity would be regarded by the broader galactic community. In the preparation chamber beneath the arena, Sarah went through her pre-combat routine with the same methodical precision she had used during the Void War. Her enhanced physiology was operating at peak efficiency, every system optimized for the coming conflict. But more importantly, her mind was calm and focused, analyzing everything she had observed about Kethmer biology and fighting techniques. Marcus and Yuki stood nearby, offering support while respecting her need for mental preparation. They had seen her in this state before, during the darkest days of humanity's war against the machines. It was a transformation that never failed to impress them, as their colleague and friend became something harder and more dangerous than most beings could imagine. "Remember," Marcus said quietly, checking the readings on his portable scanner, "Kethmer physiology relies heavily on their natural armor and brute strength. They're not used to opponents who can match their power, so their fighting style tends to be straightforward and overwhelming. Use that against him." Yuki nodded in agreement. "Our diplomatic files indicate that Kethmer culture places enormous emphasis on personal honor and species superiority. If you can make him look foolish in front of this audience, it will damage more than just his pride. It could shift the entire balance of power in this sector." Sarah stretched her enhanced muscles, feeling the reinforced fibers respond with perfect efficiency. Her bones, laced with metallic compounds developed during the war, could withstand pressures that would shatter normal human skeletal structure. Her reflexes, accelerated by carefully calibrated neural modifications, operated at speeds that most aliens would find difficult to track. "I understand the stakes," she said calmly. "This isn't just about putting an arrogant commander in his place. This is about showing the galaxy that humanity has earned its place among the stars." Above them in the arena, Zixtara was conducting his own preparations. Surrounded by his aide and several other Kethmer officers who had arrived to support him, he was reviewing what little intelligence they had managed to gather about human combat capabilities. Unfortunately for him, most of the available information focused on human technology rather than their enhanced biological capabilities. Lieutenant Curtis looked increasingly uncomfortable as he read from his datapad. "Sir, the reports about human performance during the Void War are ... concerning, according to multiple sources. Individual human soldiers were capable of engaging multiple combat androids simultaneously and winning." Zixtar dismissed the reports with a wave of one massive hand. "Propaganda and exaggeration. Beings always inflate their accomplishments when telling stories to impress others. I've seen this human size and build. Whatever tricks she used to catch me off guard before won't work in formal combat." But privately, the Kethmer commander was less confident than he appeared. The ease with which Sarah had thrown him had shaken his understanding of the universe. For the first time in his military career, he was entering combat without absolute certainty of victory. The sensation was both alien and deeply disturbing to him. In the viewing galleries, Ambassador Veltar sat with representatives from a dozen major civilizations. The ancient being had lived through numerous galactic conflicts and understood the broader implications of what they were about to witness. Beside him, Admiral Vexan of the Selenite Coalition watched with intense interest. Still bitter from recent defeats at the hands of Kethmer forces, "This could change everything," Admiral Vexan said quietly, his crystalline features refracting the arena lights in complex patterns. If the humans prove themselves here, it could embolden resistance against hegemony expansion throughout the sector. Ambassador Veltar nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, though I suspect we may be witnessing something even more significant than a simple power shift. From what I've observed of these humans, they represent something genuinely new in galactic civilization. The arena's public address system activated, filling the chamber with the measured tones of the station's central computer. Combat challenge participants report to the arena floor. All safety protocols are active. Combat will continue until one participant yields, is rendered unconscious, or is unable to continue. Sarah emerged from the preparation chamber to thunderous noise from the assembled crowd. Beings whistled, chirped, clicked, and roared their approval in dozens of different ways. Many had placed significant wagers on the outcome, with the odds heavily favoring the massive HFY warrior. Despite his earlier humiliation, she walked to the center of the arena with relaxed confidence. Her human appearance unchanged, but her enhanced body ready for whatever Zixthara could throw at her. The contrast with her opponent was stark as he entered from the opposite side. His imposing bulk making even the large arena seem smaller. Zixthara had stripped down to his basic armor, revealing the full extent of his natural weaponry. His chitinous carapace gleamed under the arena lights, and his 4 muscular arms ended in hands tipped with claws capable of rending metal. When he reached the center of the arena, he towered over Sarah by nearly 4 feet, his shadow completely engulfing her smaller form. Last chance to withdraw. Little human, he rumbled, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. Acknowledge Kethmer's superiority, and I will allow you to leave with minimal injury. Sarah looked up at him with calm eyes. I think I'll take my chances, Commander. But I appreciate the offer. The arena's referee, a neutral party from the Arbitrator Guild, activated the combat protocols. Energy barriers sprang to life around the combat area, designed to contain the fight and protect the spectators. Sensor arrays began recording every detail of the encounter for later analysis and legal review. Combatants, prepare for engagement, the referee announced. Combat begins in 10 seconds. Zixthara dropped into a combat stance that had been perfected by his species over millennia of warfare. His weight was distributed across his 4 limbs, ready to spring forward with devastating force. His strategy was simple: use his superior reach and strength to grapple with the human, then crush her enhanced body against his armored carapace. Sarah's stance appeared almost casual by comparison, but those with military experience in the audience recognized the subtle indicators of advanced combat training. Her center of gravity was perfectly balanced, her hands positioned to react to attacks from multiple angles, and her posture suggested a fighter comfortable with opponents much larger than herself. Begin combat, the referee declared. Zixthara exploded forward with surprising speed for something so massive. His attack was exactly what Sarah had expected, a direct charge intended to overwhelm her with brute force and superior mass. To most observers, it seemed impossible that she could survive the assault, let alone counter it effectively. But Sarah had faced worse odds during the Void War. Combat androids designed specifically to kill enhanced humans had tried to crush her with similar tactics. She had learned not just to survive such encounters, but to turn them into opportunities. As Zixthara closed the distance between them, Sarah moved with fluid grace that seemed to defy physics. She stepped aside at the last possible moment, letting his momentum carry him past her while simultaneously striking at a specific point on his knee joint. Her enhanced strength, focused through precise technique, sent shock waves through his leg that caused him to stumble. The HFY commander recovered quickly, spinning around to face her with all 4 arms spread wide. His first swing would have decapitated a normal human, but Sarah ducked beneath it while moving closer to his body. Her counterattack was a series of rapid strikes to pressure points that her enhanced nervous system had identified with computer-like precision. What followed was less a fight than a demonstration of the difference between raw power and refined skill. Zixthara threw everything he had at his smaller opponent, using techniques that had served him well against conventional enemies. But Sarah was not a conventional enemy. Every attack was anticipated, redirected, or simply avoided with movements too quick for most observers to follow. The arena erupted in chaos, as beings realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Kethmer military dominance had been based on the assumption that no species could match them in direct physical combat. That assumption was being systematically dismantled before their eyes. Sarah's strategy was as elegant as it was effective. Rather than trying to match Zixthara's strength directly, she used his own power against him. Every charge became. The moment Zixthara's massive hand came within striking distance, Sarah moved. Her motion was so swift and precise that many of the observers missed the actual mechanics of what happened. One instant she was standing calmly before the imposing Kethmor commander, and the next instant he was flying backward through the air. What Sarah had done was deceptively simple in appearance, but devastatingly effective in execution. As Zixthara's hand approached her shoulder, she had stepped slightly to the side while simultaneously grasping his wrist with both hands. Using his own momentum and the principles of leverage that humans had perfected over millennia, she redirected his energy while adding her own enhanced strength to the equation. The result was a throw that sent nearly 9 feet and 800 pounds of armored alien warrior sailing across the trading floor. Zixthara crashed into a display of exotic fruits from the verdant worlds, sending a shower of multicolored pulp and juice across a 20-foot radius. The reinforced metal frame of the display, designed to withstand the weight of tons of merchandise, buckled under the impact of his body. For a moment, the massive Kethmor lay stunned among the wreckage, his 4 eyes blinking in confusion as his brain tried to process what had just occurred. The trading floor erupted into chaos. Beings who had been quietly observing suddenly burst into animated discussions in dozens of different languages. Some species that communicated through color changes or electromagnetic pulses filled the air with brilliant displays of light and energy. The Vexti began clicking excitedly in their rapid-fire chittering language, while the crystalline resonance collective chimed like wind bells in a storm. Marcus couldn't suppress a grin as he watched Zixthara struggle to extricate himself from the ruined fruit display. "That's my girl," he muttered under his breath. During the Void War, he had seen Sarah throw armed combat androids twice her size with the same casual efficiency she had just demonstrated. Yuki, despite her diplomatic training, felt a surge of pride and satisfaction at seeing the arrogant commander taken down a few notches. She had spent too many years dealing with species who assumed human weakness based on appearance alone. Sometimes, as much as she preferred peaceful solutions, she had to admit that a physical demonstration carried more weight than hours of careful negotiation. Lieutenant Curtis stared in shock at his superior officer. In all his years of service, he had never seen Zixthara bested in physical combat by anyone, let alone by such a small opponent. The young Kethmer's worldview was crashing down around him as he tried to reconcile what he had just witnessed with everything he thought he knew about species hierarchy and military superiority. Sarah remained exactly where she had been standing, her posture relaxed and her breathing steady. The throw had required minimal effort on her part, though she knew that to the observers it must have appeared impossibly dramatic. Her enhanced physiology, combined with years of martial arts training and combat experience, made such feats routine for her, but she understood the psychological impact it would have on witnesses. Slowly, Zixthara managed to rise to his feet. Purple and orange fruit juices dripped from his chitinous armor, and several exotic seeds clung to the ridges of his carapace. His 4 eyes focused on Sarah with a mixture of rage, confusion, and for the first time in his military career, genuine uncertainty. The casual ease with which she had thrown him was completely outside his understanding of how the universe worked. "Impossible," he rumbled, his voice carrying a tremor of disbelief. "You cannot be that strong. No creature your size could possess such power. It must be some kind of technology, some hidden device?" Sarah shook her head calmly. "No devices, Commander. No hidden technology. Just proper training, enhanced physiology, and the understanding that strength comes in many forms. The crowd around them had grown larger as word of the confrontation spread through the station's communication networks. Representatives from species that had been shopping in other sectors began arriving to witness the spectacle. Among them was Ambassador Veltar of the Midnight Consortium, a wise and ancient being whose species had been observing galactic politics for thousands of years. Zixtara wiped fruit pulp from his face with one of his upper arms, his mandibles clicking in agitation. You speak of enhanced physiology. What modifications could possibly grant such abilities to so weak a species? It was Marcus who answered, stepping forward to stand beside Sarah. During our war with the Void Construct, every human who served in combat roles underwent extensive biological and cybernetic enhancement. Reinforced skeletal structure, optimized muscle fibers, accelerated nervous system response, improved cardiovascular efficiency. Dr. Chun here was one of our most decorated combat medics. She didn't just treat the wounded, she fought alongside the assault teams. The revelation sent another wave of discussion through the assembled crowd. Many species were familiar with minor biological modifications, but the scope and integration of human enhancements was beyond what most had imagined possible. The idea that an entire species would voluntarily undergo such extensive alterations to survive a threat spoke to a level of determination and adaptability that few could match. Lieutenant Curtis found his voice at last. The Void Construct War? But our intelligence report said that was impossible. The machines had superior technology and numbers. No biological species could have defeated them in direct combat. Yuki stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over despite the unusual circumstances. The Void Construct had advantages in raw computational power and manufacturing capacity, but they underestimated human creativity and our willingness to adapt. We didn't fight them the way they expected to be fought. We changed ourselves to match the threat. Zixtara's fury was building as the implications of what he was hearing began to sink in. His species prided itself on natural superiority, on the genetic gifts that evolution had granted them. The idea that a seemingly weak species could make themselves stronger through artificial means challenged everything he believed about the natural order. "Abominations," he snarled, his voice carrying across the trading floor. "You have corrupted your own bodies, made yourselves into unnatural creatures. This is not strength, this is cheating." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Several species in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, as the debate between natural and enhanced abilities was a contentious topic in galactic society. Some civilizations, like the Kethmer, viewed any form of self-modification as an abandonment of genetic purity. Others saw enhancement as a natural progression of evolution. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. We did what was necessary to survive and protect not just ourselves, but every other species threatened by the Void Construct. While others debated the ethics of enhancement, we were dying by the millions on battlefields across 17 star systems. Our modifications weren't about gaining advantage. They were about keeping our soldiers alive long enough to complete their missions. She gestured towards Zixtara, who was still picking fruit seeds from his armor. "You mock us as feeble because we don't look like warriors according to your standards. But strength isn't just about muscles and natural armor. It's about the willingness to sacrifice, to change, to become whatever your people need you to be. Can you say the same about your own species?" The challenge struck home. Zixtara straightened to his full height, his massive frame towering over the human once again. But this time, the size difference didn't carry the same psychological weight it had before. Everyone present had seen how quickly that apparent advantage could be neutralized. "You dare question Kethmer courage?" he demanded. "We have ruled this sector for 3,000 years. Our military might is unquestioned. No species has ever successfully challenged our dominance." Marcus laughed, the sound carrying no humor. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a 5'4" human just put your finest warrior on his ass without breaking a sweat. Maybe it's time to reconsider your assumptions about dominance." The insult was deliberate and calculated. Marcus knew that pushing Zixtara's anger would likely provoke another physical confrontation. But he also understood that this moment represented something larger than a simple disagreement between individuals. This was about respect, about humanity's place in the galactic community, and about challenging the assumptions that kept certain species in positions of unearned authority. Zixthara's four hands clenched into fists as his rage reached a boiling point. You want a real demonstration of Kethmer superiority? Very well, I challenge you to formal combat. Single combat, according to the ancient traditions. Let us see how your artificial enhancements fare against natural perfection. The formal challenge sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. Single combat challenges were rare in modern galactic society, typically reserved for matters of extreme honor or diplomatic necessity. The legal implications alone were staggering, as the outcome would be binding according to most interspecies treaties. Ambassador Veltar pushed through the crowd, his ancient form moving with surprising grace. Commander Zixthara, I must advise caution. A formal challenge carries significant legal and political ramifications. Are you certain you wish to pursue this course of action? But Zixthara was beyond Listini. The galactic trade station Nexus 7 hummed with activity as thousands of beings from across the known galaxy conducted their daily business. Merchants haggled over exotic goods, diplomats whispered in shadowy corners, and travelers waited for transport to distant worlds. Among the bustling crowd, few paid attention to the small group of humans who had recently arrived from Earth. Commander Zixthara of the Hegemony Navy stood at the observation deck, his forearms crossed behind his back as he gazed down at the main trading floor. His species, the Kethmer, had ruled this sector for over 3 millennia. Standing nearly 9 feet tall with chitinous armor naturally covering their bodies and muscles that could crush steel, they were the undisputed military power in this region of space. Zixthara had never encountered a species that could match their physical prowess, and he certainly didn't expect to find one among the newcomers called humans. Look at them, Zixthara rumbled to his aide. Lieutenant Curtis, his voice carrying the deep resonance typical of his kind. These so-called humans. They're so small, so fragile. How did such pathetic creatures ever manage to leave their homeworld? Lieutenant Curtis shifted nervously. Unlike his commander, he had actually read the reports about humanity's recent achievements. Their rapid technological advancement, their successful colonization of multiple systems, and most notably, their victory against the machine intelligences known as the Void Construct had impressed many in the galactic community. Sir, perhaps we should not underestimate them. The reports suggest— Reports? Zixthara snorted, cutting off his subordinate. Written by desk-bound analysts who have never seen real combat? Look at them with your own eyes, Lieutenant. They have no natural armor, no claws, no enhanced musculature. They're barely taller than a Kethmore juvenile. What could such weak beings possibly accomplish against a real threat? Down on the trading floor, Dr. Sarah Chun was examining a display of rare minerals when she became aware of the conversation taking place on the observation deck above. Her enhanced hearing, a standard modification for deep space explorers, easily picked up the Kethmore commander's dismissive words. She glanced up briefly, noting the imposing figure of Zixthara as he gestured toward her group with obvious disdain. Sarah had encountered this attitude before. As humanity expanded into the galaxy, they often faced species who judged them based on their physical appearance alone. Most aliens failed to understand that humans had evolved differently, relying on intelligence, adaptability, and technology rather than brute strength. What they also failed to realize was that human bodies, while appearing delicate, were capable of remarkable things when properly trained and enhanced. Dr. Chun, called out Marcus Rodriguez, her research partner and former military engineer. Take a look at these energy crystals. The molecular structure is fascinating. Sarah walked over to join Marcus, but her attention remained partially focused on the Kethmore commander above. She had served as a combat medic during the Void War before transitioning to xenorchaeology, and her body still carried the modifications that had kept her alive during that brutal conflict. Enhanced bone density, improved muscle efficiency, accelerated reflexes. and reinforced joints were just some of the upgrades that lay hidden beneath her seemingly ordinary human exterior. Zixthara continued his commentary, his voice growing louder and more disparaging. The galaxy has grown soft if we're accepting such inferior species into our trading networks. In my day, only the strong survive contact with superior civilizations. These humans should count themselves fortunate that we Kethma are civilized enough to tolerate their presence. Several other species in the area began to take notice of the commander's words. A group of insectoid Vexti chittered nervously among themselves, while some crystalline beings known as the Resonance Collective flickered with uncertain light patterns. The tension in the air was becoming palpable. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the third member of the human team and a specialist in interspecies relations, approached Sarah with concern evident in her expression. Sarah, perhaps we should leave. This situation feels like it could escalate. Sarah shook her head slightly. Let it play out, Yuki. Sometimes these things need to be addressed directly. Marcus looked up from his crystal analysis, his enhanced cybernetic eye whirring softly as it focused on the Kethmore above. That's Commander Zixthara. I recognize him from the military databases. He's got quite a reputation for aggression and species supremacist views. His unit was responsible for several questionable actions during the border disputes with the Selenite Coalition. As if summoned by their attention, Zixthara began to descend from the observation deck. His heavy footsteps echoed through the trading floor as other beings quickly moved out of his way. His aide followed reluctantly. Clearly uncomfortable with whatever his commander had planned, the massive Kethmer approached the human group with deliberate slowness, each step designed to emphasize his imposing presence. His four eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his angular head, fixed on Sarah as she appeared to be the team leader. When he stopped in front of them, his shadow completely engulfed all three humans. Greetings, little ones, Zixthara said, his tone dripping with condescension. I am Commander Zixthara of the Hegemony Navy. I couldn't help but notice your presence here on our station. Tell me, how exactly did such delicate creatures manage to acquire starfaring technology? Did you perhaps steal it from a more advanced species? The insult was deliberate and unmistakable. Conversations around them began to quiet as more beings stopped to observe the confrontation. Sarah felt the familiar surge of controlled anger that had served her well during combat situations. She took a small step forward, placing herself between Zixthara and her colleagues. I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, she replied calmly, her voice steady despite the obvious provocation. We earned our place in the galactic community through the same means as any other species: intelligence, determination, and the courage to face challenges that others might flee from. Zixthara's mandibles clicked in what passed for Kethmore laughter. Courage? From beings who look as though they might break in a strong wind? I find that difficult to believe. Perhaps you simply haven't encountered a real challenge yet. Lieutenant Curtis shifted uncomfortably behind his commander. Sir, perhaps we should— Silence, Zixthara snapped without looking back. His attention remained fixed on Sarah. I'm curious about these humans and their supposed capabilities. You speak of courage and determination, but I see only fragility. Your species lacks the natural weapons that evolution grants to true warriors. How do you expect to survive in a galaxy where might determines right? Sarah's expression remained neutral, but those who knew her well could see the subtle signs of her combat readiness. Her stance shifted almost imperceptibly, her weight distributing evenly across both feet. Her hands, which had been casually at her sides, moved to a more centered position. To most observers, she appeared completely relaxed. But Marcus and Yuki recognized the preparatory movements of someone trained in advanced combat techniques. Survival isn't always about physical strength, Commander, Sarah said. Sometimes it's about understanding your environment, adapting to changing circumstances, and knowing when to apply force and when to use intelligence. Pretty words, Zixthara rumbled, taking another step closer. His bulk now loomed directly over Sarah, close enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. But words won't protect you when facing a real threat. Allow me to demonstrate the difference between our species. The Kethmar commander reached out with one of his massive hands, intending to grab Sarah's shoulder in what he probably considered a gentle demonstration of his strength. To him, it would be a simple way to prove his point about human fragility without actually harming her. To Sarah, it was an act of aggression that triggered every combat instinct she had developed over years of fighting for humanity's survival. What happened next would be remembered and discussed throughout Nexus 7 for years to come, eventually becoming part of Station legend and spreading to trading posts across the sector. The trading floor had grown, increasingly quiet as more beings stopped their activities to watch the confrontation between the imposing Kethmar commander and the seemingly insignificant human. Representatives from dozens of species formed a loose circle around the encounter, their various forms of communication creating a subtle undercurrent of nervous energy. Among the observers were several members of species that had their own complicated relationships with the Kethmar. The hegemony's military dominance had shaped galactic politics for millennia, often at the expense of smaller or less aggressive civilizations. Many of these beings watched with a mixture of curiosity and hope, wondering if perhaps someone would finally stand up to Kethmar. Arrogance. Dr. Chun's teammates flanked her at a respectful distance, ready to provide support if needed, but understanding that this moment belonged to Sarah alone. Marcus had worked with her during the Void War and knew exactly what she was capable of when pushed. Yuki, while primarily a diplomat, had seen enough interspecies conflicts to recognize that sometimes a show of strength was the only language that certain beings understood. Zixthar's hand moved toward Sarah's shoulder with